Hello, folks, vinyl community. Works DB71. Blake. I'm back with the second part of the book thread, music books about music thread that I started myself yesterday. The first one was about non-classical stuff that has been very interesting to me. Of recent note, and including one that I'm reading now, Birds of Fire. This particular video, however, is for those of you that are interested in classically oriented music. So what I'll do is I'll throw up a few good introductory texts that give you a good foundation for classical music. And then some books specifically geared towards the collecting and collection of classical music on record. So I'll jump right into it. This is going to be all classical. So if this is no interest, you can skip, and I won't mind. So I've shown a couple of these very early on, but I'll show them again because I think they're very, very, very good for what the target is. The Vintage Guide to Classical Music by John Swafford. Again, I'll put this information down in the detailed notes below, and you can find a copy for yourself. This is a very, very good book about just classical music, probably at the level of maybe a good semester course that you would take. Classical Music 101 does very, very good, an extremely good job, actually the best I've seen that I've gotten my hands on in terms of classifying each major period of classical music from the pre-Renaissance and Renaissance, Baroque, classical, Romantic, and then modern, and within each period, of course, highlighting the main aspects of each of those periods and the major composers and some detail about each of those, and then minor composers. Very, very good book. This would be the one I would recommend. I would recommend to anyone with an interest in classical music. John Swafford's. Highly, highly recommended. Classical Music 101 by Fred Plotkin. This is pretty good. Not as good as the first one, of course. But this I would say would be a very good second to have. I like them both. I use them both, of course. This one, this seems to be oriented more, instead of through the different periods of time, this is grouped more by commonalities in music. Orchestral, symphony, piano, concerto, and then takes that kind of approach. So if you're more inclined to want to follow a particular instrument or class of instruments, this will be a good one to have in your collection. Two more about the general classical music. Both of these are by Ted Libby. If you do much listening to NPR, National Public Radio, you know Ted Libby. He used to be the Performance Today host. So I have two. This one is called NPR's Guide to Building a Classical CD Collection. This I used when I first started trying to gather classical music. For the most part, this walks through each of the composers and highlights some of their best material and makes recommendations, specific recommendations actually, for the classical CDs that are being recommended. This is good. Very very good introduction to the individual composers. And as far as the recommendations are concerned, yes, you can still find these CDs. Many of them are still in print, if not by the original label that they were released on, at least some budget label. It's good. It's good. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it, but I had to show it because I still use this. A better one, though, would be this bigger one. The NPR Listener's Encyclopedia of Classical Music by Ted Libby. Now, this is more like an encyclopedia. Very much like the Rough Guide to Jazz that McSopey showed. This, you really just, you pick an idea, a composer, a piece of music, a term, a classical term, anything, any of that kind of stuff, and you look it up and it's here. This is basically the classical Wikipedia in a book form. The NPR's Listener's Encyclopedia of Classical Music. Again, wouldn't recommend reading this from front to back, but it's good to have if you want to look up something specifically related to a composer or a conductor. There you go. Now, those are the four books that I recommend in terms of just getting into classical and understanding more about classical music and the history. Now what I want to show is information that's more directly related to the collecting of classical music on record. I guess what I'm going to change the order here. Hold on. This is... I think this is probably pretty hard to find now. The Classical Long Playing Record. And I'm going to kill this name here. I know it's Jaco von Witteloostuyn. I don't. Witteloostuyn. This was actually recommended to me by David Canfield. Used to be the proprietor owner of Ars Antiqua classical record business, classical musical business. I want to say this came from Norway. Let me get this for sure. Maybe the Netherlands. Yeah, Amsterdam. So what this is basically a huge reference research work on the classical LP, and I'm going to try to show you this without destroying the book. So lots of information here about classical records, and a big section on the covers and the art, the different periods of artwork that went on these covers. Then, most importantly, I'll show you an attempt to try to date classical releases by their catalog number. So, for example, I'll just randomly pick here Geffen, USA, from 1959 to 1964, catalogs numbers 100 and above. Let's see. Let me try to find something that people recognize. Oh, so Eclipse. Oh man, this is live, folks. Alright, here's a better one. CBS Columbia. These different groups of years across the top, and then particular label ranges, catalog ranges, and where they show up in the history. Now, the way this was assembled was, I think, through a lot of catalogs from different companies and record review magazines and things like that, and a massive amount of work here. Really, for those people who are interested in trying to date specific catalog numbers, and if you're not interested in that, this still is a pretty good book because the first half really goes over. I mean, a very, very well presented overview of various covers, classical oriented covers. And of course, the beginning of it, some labels and things like that. There's the back. Again, the classical long-playing record by Jaco van Witteloostuyn. I'm sure I'm killing that, but a very heavy book. But there's more heavy books coming. Now, getting into the pricing of classical records, I've got two. Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and say I got two different books. This one really, it's kind of a dud, but I'm going to say it in a nice way. Let's say that its intended purpose was to just be a pure price guide, and I guess in 2004 it was okay. Rare Classical Record Price Guide 2004, and basically what this covers are the very high-end classical records. There's the table of contents there. Decca, LXT, XXLs, SETs, Columbias, His Master's Voice releases, EMI releases, and just essentially goes through each and every one by catalog and tries to put a value there. Now, this was an English release, so everything is written in pounds and stuff. But I say that it's moderately okay in the sense that it'll give you relative values. The values there aren't really legitimate, but it can tell you, hey, okay, you might have something that's worth a little more money or something like that. But you know, as you can tell, this gets no use from me. I probably held this for about 12 minutes and then realized this was a mistake. But if all you want to do is just collect high-end classical, this may be useful. So I'm showing this to you just because. Now, the one that you should have, if you're really seriously collecting classical, is the Canfield Guide. Wow. 3 inches of pure pleasure. Canfield Guide to Classical Recordings. This is the 5th and final edition that he did, David Canfield did. As I said earlier, David was proprietor of Ars Antiqua. They were a classical music business, mail order business for the most part, out of Bloomington, Indiana. And very early on, he computerized his business, and through the years he kept records of every sale that he made, and he basically used that as his source for building this book. Now, as you can see, this is extremely, extremely dense and detailed. There are over 175,000 listings in here. The page number, the pages aren't numbered, so I can't tell you how many pages there are, but it is like literally 3 inches thick. It weighs, that must weigh 10 pounds. But the way these guys are listed is by label and catalog number, and then within each catalog number, individual label pressings for the major ones. So this is an example here. Hopefully you can see that. Is that focusing? Yes, dated 2000, but David was really he was really keyed in on their values. He didn't overvalue classical records like many people did. There are a lot of $3 listings in here, a lot of $4 listings in here, a lot of $5 listings in here, and not just a gold mine-esque blanket listing of everything's at least $12. No, he listed here what he sold his records for. Whenever there was a sale, that's what got listed in here. If there were multiple sales, then he used the average. Recommended, but very hard to find. Canfield Guide to Classical Recordings. If you are at all serious about collecting classical records and want to know what you've got, or need values for insurance purposes or anything of that nature, you gotta get this. I can't say anything more. This is extremely valuable. Now there's one more piece of Canfield related material, and there it is. This is a companion, the Discographic Encyclopedia of Classical Composers. Now, it's 1992 edition. Again, this was the last one that he did. But what this goes about doing is listing all of the known works for a particular composer. So that, let's see, one of my favorite composers is Dvorak. So I'll flip to Dvorak. There he is. Every classical release with Dvorak on it. So if you want to be a completist, you want to know all of the London releases that have Dvorak on it. Here's a start. Now, again, this was culled from all of the information that David stored in his databases. I don't use this that much. I just had to have it because I appreciate what David did, and it was a companion piece to the other guide. So, wow, lifting those books. So there you have it for introductory classical music stuff and a few of the guide reference materials that I use. I've got a ton of other classical related books, but they're really more detailed in terms of individual composers, biographies, more detailed stuff about, I don't know, just, it'd probably bore you to death. I guess if there are those of you that are interested in asking more detailed questions about things, I can tell you more about what I have and what I would recommend. But as far as classical reference material, classical collecting, definitely recommend the Canfield Guide. Get the 2000 edition, the 5th edition, released in 2000. Earlier ones are nowhere near as detailed as the last one that he did. And as far as this goes, this would really be for folks that are interested in studying the history of the classical covers themselves, and if you want to know dates about specific releases. It's a dud. I wouldn't worry about this. And as far as getting into classical music, extremely highly recommended. A close second. And the others are okay. So that's it for this one. Thanks for spending 20 minutes with me and my classical books. Maybe there'll be another video. There are a lot of books here, but I'll give you a chance to make one. Show me some books. I've got some Barnes & Noble books burning a hole in my pocket. Let's spend it. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.